Dune. Dune. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to Ruben Uncut. Today I'm talking about Dune Part 2. Also, the best movie I've seen so far this year. Now, to be fair, I haven't seen that many movies this year. Wait, did Mean Girls come out this year or last year? Don't know why I suddenly started talking in this voice. Just the thing that happened. Not really appropriate to do, so I'm going to try and stop. Oh, wait, going a British accent for no reason. Don't know what's happening. Hopefully it will stop at some point during the review. Genuinely unplanned. What Ed? It's a typical British accent from an American. Don't know why it came on like this. Hopefully it will transform into something else at some point. But let's get down to Dune. Turn a little bit Australian there at the end. Oh, no. My voice has become unaffixed in the, I want to say space-time continuum, but that's not how accents work, I don't think. I've gotten sidetracked. Let's get back to it. Dune is by Denis Villeneuve. Well, broke the accent. Here we go. Dune, or Dune Part 2, as this technically is the second part to the movie Dune, unshockingly. If you were shocked by that, slow down. This movie might be too much for you. Now, talking about Dune's a little complicated because I'm not really sure what to do. Well, let's talk about it. The first Dune, of course, features the story of this gentleman, Paul Atreides. Actually, technically, Dune 2 is also the story of Paul Atreides, but we'll get into that in a minute. Dune, of course, is based on a fantasy sci-fi novel called Dune. Unsurprisingly. Written by one Frank, what is it? Is it Frank Herbert or Herbert Frank? It's Frank Herbert, right? Yeah, it is Frank Herbert. It does. Frank Herbert feels like it's missing something, right? Like it feels like there should be a third name in there or something. Frank Herbert. I don't know. It feels like it's just shy of what a name should be. But let's get back to Dune. So Dune, of course, is a fantasy sci-fi series. Honestly, the book could best be described as Game of Thrones in space. And actually, with this second movie, it in fact does feel more like Game of Thrones in space. Now, a thing to understand is that the first Dune is largely setup and world building. It's awesome, awe-inspiring world building, but there were a number of people who felt a little bit cold to it at first. Now, this makes sense, though, because the first movie doesn't have as much of an emotional arc because it is largely just setting up the actual events for Dune 2. It's a miracle we got Dune 2 because Dune 1 would forever feel incomplete. An incomplete masterpiece is what Dune 1 would feel like if this movie did not exist. Because this movie brings it all in. You see, the thing that Dune 2 has over Dune 1, even though I personally didn't really miss this because I don't know if it's because I'm on the spectrum or whatever, but I'm very okay with a less, a less emotional story. Don't get me wrong, I'm a very, I understand emotions and I'm very pro use of emotions in storytelling. Huge on it, actually. But sometimes I don't mind when directors have a more aloof style, a more intellectualized style to their storytelling. And Denis Villeneuve, did I get it right that time? I don't know. Villeneuve? Is he French or Spanish? I genuinely don't know. I could look it up, but I won't. Anyways, where was I? Right. Some people have criticized him for having this sort of more distant style of storytelling. His storytelling style feels more like a Christopher Nolan's in the fact that there's not a lot of extra dialogue. Everything's very focused. People don't over-explain things. In fact, that's the thing I love about Dune 2 is that, like, it chooses very natural dialogue to tell a story and fill in details of the universe. It's to the point where if you're unaccustomed to more naturalized dialogue storytelling, you may miss some of the details of the world around you. It's not like a Marvel movie that sits down and it's like, okay, this is what's happening. We're gonna say some funny lines. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. Funny lines. It's not gonna be like that. which is not to say that Dune 2 lacks humor. I actually think the Dune movies have a decent amount of humor. I saw someone complain about the first movie that Jason Momoa is the only person that tells a joke, which is not true. There is other funny moments in that movie besides Jason Momoa's one joke. I'm sorry that your sense of humor is very broad and not as developed and dry as my own. But the thing that sort of ties Dune 2 together a little bit stronger than Dune 1, or by that I mean what some audience members thought was missing, was that Dune 2 has a stronger emotional core, because Dune 2 is ultimately about the relationship of these two people. This, of course, is Paul Atreides' white savior deconstruction trope, and this is his native girlfriend, Chani. She has a war name too, but I don't remember what it is. Now, I'm going to be honest. I think one of the things that helps bring this movie together is honestly Javier Bardem. Like, Javier Bardem is bringing it. Specifically, Javier Bardem is one of the best sources of humor in the movie, in my personal opinion. Like, once again, I don't want you to expect like a Marvel level of humor. What's here is subtler and drier, but I did find Javier Bardem to be very funny. In that style that I just described. Reality is never sacrificed for a self-aware joke. Thank God. Thank God. I'm keeping distracted by this. Let's move along. So what's going on in Dune? So in Dune, we got this guy over here. He's Paul Atreides. Okay, Paul Atreides. He is the grandson. I'm sorry, not the grandson. What the fuck am I talking about? Oh, I know what I was about. I'm about to give you a spoiler. So Paul Atreides is the rightful heir to the House Atreides. Although people look down on him slightly because technically his mother was a concubine and not a true wife. But he is technically the heir to House Atreides, which is good because Dune 1 ends with House Atreides being massacred, like cut to ribbons by the evil Harkonnens, who are basically space Roman Nazis, who live on a planet where color must be illegal because they literally only use black and white on that planet. And if not for subtle light changes here and there, and the use of blue digital text on some of their devices, I would effectively think to myself, this is just black and white. And I think some of it is just black and white, but you know, like I said, there's clear sequences where they're like, we want you to be aware of color. But the Harkonnens are pretty nasty. They are nasty people. They come from a heavily psychopathic warrior culture. They're super into violence, and for a long time, they controlled the spice. The spice. So what is the spice? Now, this is actually very important because in the world of Dune, they have fast and light travel. But the thing is that the pilots need to be able to operate at faster than light levels. Now, the thing that's interesting is that Dune doesn't actually... neither movie show us the pilots, because the pilots aren't really important to this movie, which is much more about the Game of Thrones style politics and rise to power, which is what occurs here. Now, the thing about... Now, some people might surface level accuse Dune of Dune's part 1 and 2 of being just another white savior story. But the reality is that Dune is part of a deconstruction of the white savior motif. So I'll need to explain this to anyone who's not a Zack Snyder fan. That's a joke, because Zack Snyder's a deconstructionist. Let's move along. The story of Dune is ultimately about the rise of Paul Atreides to power. Now, the thing is that Paul Atreides' mother, who was once the concubine of his father, and ultimately his father's true love, is part of something called the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit are essentially like space Catholics sort of deal. There are a bunch of religious zealots who go around the universe transferring knowledge via drugs, but also doing this thing where they go to planets and they start to basically infect the religious beliefs of that planet and start to weave in their own narratives to sort of take over the religions of those other planets. Now, a fun historical fact here is that the word Jesuits, of course, refers to a sect of Catholics in real life. Fun fact about the Jesuits, um, during the period of American history where we really, really wanted to keep out those dirty Catholics, because that was a period of American history, believe it or not, there was a period where we really, really did not trust, like, or care for Catholics. Catholics was the religion of those gross immigrants like the Italians and the Irish, and now, of course, the Mexicans. But during that time period where we really, really hated the Catholics here in America, he says uncomfortably under his breath, realizing that he was mostly raised Catholic, there were conspiracy theories about the Jesuits. Actually, the conspiracy theories about the Jesuits were specifically that. Okay, so the conspiracy theories about the Jesuits. Now, look, I haven't looked into the conspiracy theories about the Jesuits. I don't know that the Jesuits are doing these things, but I do kind of need to just point out the fact that a lot of the conspiracy stuff surrounding the Jesuits heavily resembles the Jewish question. You see, it really feels like this concept of like an outsider paranoia sort of sweeps across all types of. If there's a group you really don't want in your society, then you spread a series of conspiracy theories about how they infiltrate your society and brainwash it from within. So I don't know if Frank Herbert liked the Catholics, but naming his freaky space cult that is going all over the galaxy, infiltrating other religions and altering their beliefs, naming them the Bene Jesuits really, really makes it feel like maybe Frank Herbert either was making fun of that trope or was an anti-papist. Don't know for sure. Have to look into it. But it does feel intentional that he named that religious space called the Bene Jesuits. So Paul Atreides' mom is a Bene Jesuit. Powerful Bene Jesuit priestess. And basically her job, of course, was to try and make sure that the Atreides had a potential bloodline to Space Jesus. The movie Dune, and what really makes it good is the fact that it layers in a lot of different elements to keep you guessing as to. It never lays out the full nature of the universe in this way. Is he Space Jesus? Is it just the Bene Jesuits manipulating the world and gaining power? Both sides seem believable depending on which character's point of view you're focused on. Now, like I was saying, though, the thing that holds this movie really strongly together emotionally is that it's ultimately about these two lovebirds' love story. You see, what happens is after the Harkonnens kill all the Atreides, Paul Atreides here and his mother flee and are found by the Fremen, who are, I don't know how to put this, space Muslims. I guess I did know how to put it. Kind of. It's all really a metaphor for colonialism and the way that colonialism like influences culture and societies. But let's just move along. The space Muslims, aka the Fremen, yes, it's meant to sound like Freemen, are the indigenous people of Dune who have survived some type of Dune-esque cataclysmic apocalypse where they lost most of their water. However, their planet is inhabited by a space worm. And I am finally getting back to this. The pilots in Dune are flying at the speed of light. And in order for their brains to operate the speed of light, they need to take a drug that helps them see the future, which is spice, which only can be found on the planet of Arrakis, aka Dune. I am just noticing how insanely whack this fucking font for the movie poster is. Like, what the, like, what, how does that spell Dune? Is that a, am I not looking at an American poster? It says part 2 in English. What am I? Wait a minute. Am I looking at it backwards? Is this supposed to be a D? Oh. What's hilarious is, oh, it is a D. Oh, okay. I am looking at it backwards. Thanks, Zoom. You make me look like a fucking idiot. Yes, I'm recording in Zoom because I'm poor. And I'm going to need to reset my Apple password before I can download OBS. That's the reality of my situation, because, and I keep putting that off because Apple, why do you make it so fucking difficult to change my fucking password, Apple? 24 hours, Apple? 24 hours? What if I needed to change my password for a work-related thing, Apple? Are you fucking kidding me that I have to wait 24 hours for a password reset? Who is your product designed for, Apple? Sorry. Let's get back to Dune. I'm getting really distracted. So the pilots need the spice. The spice is only from the planet Arrakis. At the beginning of Dune 1, the Atreides family is given the ownership of Arrakis from the Harkonnens by the Emperor. But for whatever reason, the Emperor is like, fuck that, and lets the Harkonnens essentially slaughter the Atreides in order to essentially let the Harkonnens have the spice mines again. But anyways, after they all get slaughtered, Paul Atreides and his mom end up with the Fremen, aka the space Muslims, and he integrates into their society. And the big deal is that for most of the movie, he just wants to, he thinks that if he can disrupt spice, he can bring the Emperor to the planet, and that'll be how he gets his revenge. But he also, beginning of the movie, seems to really, really care about the Fremen. And he believes that the Fremen should be free and should be their own leaders. He does not want to be Space Jesus, which, you know, in the eyes of the people who do believe he is Space Jesus, is clearly a sign that he is Space Jesus. Javier Bardem definitely sees him not wanting to be Space Jesus as the ultimate sign that he is Space Jesus. And for most of the movie, he is resisting fate. But is it fate, or is he being pulled by the prophecy to this thing? Or is he merely being set up by his mother, who, as they integrate into space Muslim society, is forced by Javier Bardem to become the Reverend Mother, which is the highest Bene Gesserit role in their society, because yes, the Bene Gesserits have already become one with the space Muslims. And so his mother, Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, and yes, this is Space Jesus here is played by Timothy Chalamet. We got Zendaya as his true love, Chani. Where was I? Right. So his mother goes about becoming the Reverend Mother and setting to work all spreading her new teachings and making sure that the Bene Gesserit image of Space Jesus or El Hadib or something, El Wadib, I don't know. If I was reading it in a book, I'd probably have more consciousness of it. But like, instead I watched a movie where that people would say this word that would be difficult for me to pronounce, and I was just like, oh, Space Jesus. Side note, the Bene Gesserits are essentially, their job is to try and protect bloodlines that could lead to the return of Space Jesus. It really does sound like a lot of Catholic conspiracy theories, doesn't it? But let's move along. Paul Atreides did not want to be Space Jesus. He is determined not to be Space Jesus. All he cares about is getting revenge and being in love with this woman over here. And yes, their eyes are both blue, but that's a side effect of them all being exposed to a high level of spice. Which kind of explains why the Fremen are a very religious society. They're constantly a little bit high. Oh, right, I forgot to mention, spice is a drug. And also, technically, the excrement of giant space worms that live on Arrakis. And for some reason, everything that leaves these worms' bodies gets you high. In this dealio here, the spice is giving Space Jesus a lot of visions. And he sees that if he embraces being Space Jesus, it will start a holy war that will burn across the galaxy. And he kind of doesn't want to do that because that sounds effing terrible. And he doesn't want to be responsible for all that death. And one of the reasons that Chani is in love with him is that he seems true to himself, because Chani is not super religious. There's a whole point made in the thing that Fremen in the north are significantly less religious than the Fremen in the south. But meanwhile, going on with these Harkonnen types, they've got this whole deal. We had in the last movie, Dave Bautista's character took over Arrakis. And so taking over Arrakis, he inherited the problem of dealing with the Fremen. And unfortunately, his decision to try and genocide them really only made it easier for Paul Atreides to convince the Fremen that they could join forces and murder the shit out of the Harkonnens. If he hadn't decided to try and eliminate them, it probably would have been harder to sell to be like, join me and fight my enemies. Now, technically, the Fremen already do fight the Harkonnens, but not in a way that's effective. Because obviously, spice has been transported from this planet for centuries. But let's continue along. However, but Dave Bautista's character for most of this movie and in the prior movies was not successfully getting spice back online. The Fremen's attacks are effectively creating spice shortages in the galaxy, which is super bad for international space trade. Which I can understand them being upset about, but at the same time, they colonized this planet and essentially stole its major resources and not allowing the indigenous population to benefit from the insanely powerful resources that are needed for faster than light travel. So the Harkonnens the main Harkonnen, of course, being played by Stellan Skarsgård, who looks quite horrific for most of the movie. Stellan Skarsgård decides that Dave Bautista's character, Glassall Robin, needs to go. So he instead decides to set him up against his gladiator psychopath nephew, Fade Rotha, played by Austin Butler. I'll be honest, I have seen The Dead Don't Die, which is apparently the only thing I've seen Austin Butler in. Maybe I've seen him in other things. What the hell has Austin Butler been in? Oh, wow, I have seen Austin Butler. He was in 3 episodes of Arrow. As somebody. Yeah, no, I have not seen a lot of Austin Butler's filmography here. No, I haven't seen that Elvis movie. Here, he plays a pretty effective psychopath character. It looks like Austin Butler might be that rare, attractive character actor. Who knows? Like I said, I have seen The Dead Don't Die, but I don't remember him in it at all. But anyways, the Baron, Stellan Skarsgård's character, decides to give Arrakis to this psychopath, and he's even more brutal and crazy than Dave Bautista's character, who is just sort of a big brute. But at the same time, Dave Bautista does a great job, and Dave Bautista is very proud of being in these movies, and honestly, he should be. But essentially, as the movie develops, Space Jesus finds himself further and further forced into the role of being Space Jesus. which slowly draws a wedge between him and the woman he loves. Now, the thing about that I enjoy about this romance is that, like, there's a part of me that believes that these two characters do truly still love each other. They're just not putting up, she just is not gonna put up with this shit. Movie has killer action, by the way. And the thing that Denis Villeneuve really, like, fucking nails is just the scope of these galactic empires. It's very impressive. And there's a lot more that happens. People do drugs. People have visions. And eventually the machinations of what is it the universe or his mom? Who knows? But eventually he is forced into the position of being Space Jesus. He gets to a point where he feels like his destiny is unavoidable. And in a way, Chani is actually the one who allows him to continue down this path. Like, it is her saying that she will continue to love him that gets him to continue down the path to being Space Jesus. But once he trips balls in a ceremony that's only intended for women because men always die, he understands that he has to do Space Jesus things. And so the people of Dune come together, fucking kick the Emperor's ass, played by Christopher Walken and his hot daughter, Princess Irulan. Irulan? Lirulan? Is that an I or two L? Is that an... No. The second one's definitely an L. I think the first one has to be an I. Played by Florence Poe. I believe. Pow. See, I can't pronounce white people's names either. I want to say that visually, this movie is breathtaking. The sheer scope of things, the action of it all. They have the parts where they have people riding sandworms, fucking phenomenal. I loved this movie the first time I saw it. I haven't seen it a second time. I hope to. But honestly, this is the type of journey I go to the movies for. It has layers, both intellectually and emotionally. There's killer action. There's adventure. If you like, honestly, I found the politics of this more interesting than the politics of Game of Thrones. The story that it's telling, the way that it deconstructs the white savior trope in its analysis of colonialization, it almost makes me actually want to read Dune. Oh, Josh Brolin's also in it. He's great. I mean, honestly, everyone in the movie does a great job. There's tons of people in the movie I haven't even mentioned. Huge cast. Robert Rodriguez is listed in the cast. Does he have like a cameo or something? Well, I don't see anything on IMDb about it. But for some reason, Google thinks that Robert Rodriguez is in Dune Part 2. Maybe he has an uncredited cameo that hasn't made it to IMDb yet. Or it's just, Google being ridiculous. So, I've basically summarized the movie. I've left out a lot of details because I don't want to ruin the movie. But because I do believe that Dune is a journey worth taking. If you haven't seen the first movie, check it out. I think it's on Hulu right now. Or go to your local library and get yourself some hard media. Because Dune 2 is worth it. Now, I won't lie, Dune 1 is drier than Dune 2. But I personally think it's worth watching. I think this is worth watching. If Dune 1's a little dry for you, then you might want to skip to Dune 2. I don't know. I think Dune 1's worth watching. But I understand that it might be drier. It's certainly drier than this one. No pun intended, since it's about deserts. Both the Dune movies are a rousing success. I would actually say that honestly some of the best Space Odyssey stuff I've seen in a long time. No, I haven't seen Rebel Moon because I refuse to watch the PG-13 cut of it. Why does that exist? Just give us the director's cut, Netflix. You fucking idiots. Anyways, highly recommend Dune Part 2. Absolutely worth the ride. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Ruben Uncut. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow on Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And, if you want to contact the show, you can email me at rubenuncut@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful whatever, wherever, whoever, however you are. Dude.